Now that we've looked at some standard forms of valid argument, let's look at some standard formal fallacies. These are tricky because they look a lot like their valid cousins, but they're not, and we've got to be able to detect them when they occur. Let's take a look at a formal fallacy that is often mistakenly accepted as perfectly valid. Consider the following. Premise 1, if the messenger came, then the bell rang about noon. Premise 2, the bell rang about noon. Conclusion, so the messenger came. Now, this argument is invalid because it is possible for its premises to be true and its conclusion false. It's known as affirming the consequent. Well, let's talk a little bit about affirming the consequent. It's also known as affirmation of the consequent. Affirming the consequent is the fallacy committed by any argument featuring a conditional premise, another premise affirming that conditional's consequent, and a conclusion affirming its antecedent. So here's another example. If I dieted, then I lost weight. I lost weight, so I must have dieted. And here's the form of the argument. If P, then Q. Q, therefore P. Again, affirming the consequent. And here is its opposite number, namely denying the antecedent. Denying the antecedent is the fallacy committed by any argument featuring a conditional premise, another premise denying that conditional's antecedent, and a conclusion denying its consequent. Here's an example. If Oscar is a violinist with the Boston Symphony, then he can read music. Second premise, in fact, Oscar is not a violinist with the Boston Symphony. Conclusion, therefore, Oscar cannot read music. And here's the form of the argument. If P, then Q. Not P, therefore not Q. Again, denial of the antecedent. Let's take a look at one more formal fallacy, this one called affirming a disjunct. Affirming a disjunct is the fallacy committed by any argument featuring a premise that has an inclusive disjunction, another premise affirming one of the disjuncts, and a conclusion denying the other disjunct. Let's take a look at this familiar example, somewhat differently arrayed. Either my car was towed away by the police or my car was stolen. My car was in fact towed away by the police. Therefore, my car was not stolen. Now, anyone who lives in New York knows that a car can both be stolen and also towed by the police after it's been abandoned by the thief. Note how this fallacy differs from the valid form of disjunctive argument, which is called the denial of a disjunct. Here's the form of the fallacy affirming a disjunct. P or Q, P, conclusion, therefore not Q. Let's sum up this last chapter. We've looked at three frequently occurring formal fallacies: affirming the consequent, denial of the antecedent, and affirming a disjunct. You should memorize their forms because they'll come in very handy. Now that you know them, you're going to start to see them more often than you would have ever expected. That concludes this unit. Thank you.